Representational state transfer service, which is REST service, is used to implement communication between client and server in a web application. REST service are communication method between two applications. A web client or mobile app may call its backend solution through REST endpoint, but even backend service might communicate using REST web service call. Okay, so let's look at Spring MVC flow for the REST endpoint. Here we have a client. A client make HTTP request. The client make an HTTP request, and then we have Tomcat. Tomcat get the HTTP request and then call the Spring Boot configured servlet, which is dispatcher servlet. So dispatcher servlet is the entry point of our Spring web app. Its responsibility is to manage folder inside the Spring app. It has to find which controller action to call for the request. So the dispatcher servlet delegates the responsibility of finding the controller action to a component called handler mapping. So when handler mapping find the action associated with the request, then the dispatcher servlet will call this action. So the action will return a name. So the name that is returned will be returned to the client as a response body. So in a normal Spring MVC flow, when controller action returns that name, the dispatcher servlet delegates the responsibility of finding the view name to the view resolver. If the view resolver find the view, it will return to dispatcher servlet. Then the dispatcher servlet will return this view to the client. But here you can see we cancel this view. Okay, that means that there is no view involved here. It just return the value from the action that is returned as a response body to the client. So this is the Spring MVC flow for the REST endpoint. So in the next video, we will going to look at Spring REST in more detail in this series, Spring Framework tutorial series. See you in the next video. So let's create a new project and implement our first REST endpoint action. So go to the file, new, order. Here we have Spring Startup project. Click on next. It will take us to this, connect us to the start.spring.io. So here the name of this project, let name it REST service. Okay, and I will leave the group as coding techniques as well as the package, and I will change this to REST service tutorial. Okay, click next. So the only dependency we need here is the Spring Web and Spring Boot Dev tool for the live reload. Okay, click on this dependency, finish. Okay, our project is ready, and here it is, REST service. Okay, you can see we have the starter class here, REST service application. Okay, now let's create a new package to add our controller inside. So right click, new package, here it is, then name this controller, and then we need to create a new class. Okay, so this is the controller class here that we will create. So and let name it update controller. So and we'll let add user update controller like this, finish. So here is the class user update controller. So first of all, what we need to do here, let's add the add controller. For this to add it to a Spring Container, we have add controller. So, and I need a add request mapping here, and let have endpoint like this, API slash update. Okay, so we'll have two action inside this controller. So the first action is public string, and I will name this profile pic update. So that is for the image update, just an example. So, and this will return, let's set this will return profile picture updated successfully. Okay, so, and I will need another method. So let's define the get mapping associated, the endpoint associated with this action, that is the path. So, and the path for this, I will name it profile pic like this. Okay, so, and let's define another public string bio, that is to update bio return. Okay, so let me set have bio updated, updated successfully. Okay, so, and I will name this get with this bio. Okay, so now we will have to add response body to each of these methods, so that when we call this method, it will return these values. So we don't want to return a view, so we are telling the dispatcher servlet that this method will return directly a name that we have here. Okay, we have add response body here, and let add the same add response body here. Okay, now that we finish having these two actions, we will try to access them. So before then, let's run the application, run as Spring Boot app, and I will use Postman to access these actions that we have here, these endpoints that we have. Okay, you head to the browser and look for the www.postman.com, then download it. Once you download it, open it, you can see the interface is like this. Click on this plus that we have here. Once you click it, you will have this address bar, and you can see you can choose the HTTP method, and for our case is get method. Okay, so let's add the address to our endpoint, HTTP localhost API update profile pic. I am trying to access for the profile pic. You can see we have API update, then followed by this profile pic. So let's go back to the Postman. Once you add this, you can just click send. It will send the request, and you can see we get this as a response body, that is profile picture update successfully. Okay, so on here you will, if you want, you will add the parameter, that is request parameter, request header, and the request body here. Okay, that is what we have. And then you can, if the response consists of headers, you can see the headers here, and you can see the status for our request is okay, that is the response is okay, and here is the time that it takes and the size. So this is for the profile pic. Let's try to access the other action that we have, the other endpoint, that is bio. So let's go to the, so now let's try to access the bio and then send the request. It is a get. Go to the body, you see we have bio update successfully. So okay, now let's go back to the code here. You can see we duplicate this at response body. Here we have twice, so let's just change this to at rest controller. It serves the same purpose. At rest controller, this, remove this, so it applies to all the actions that we have inside this user update controller. So that is what we have here. See you in the next. In this section, we will going to send object as a response body. Remember, in this controller we have this profile pic update, and it is just returning that string. So now we will going to return an entire object as a response body in this REST service tutorial. So let's create first a new package, and we have this as model. Let's create a new class inside this model. The model is student. Okay, so here we will have two fields: student name, private string name, and then followed by student private string department. Okay, so let's generate getters and setters for this field here. Let's generate getters and setters, select all. Okay, finish. So now this is the object that we will going to send as a response body. Okay, so here we have the user update controller. Let's create another controller class inside the coding techniques.controller, new class, and call the student info controller. Okay, we have student info controller. Click finish. Okay, so we will going to first annotate this with address controller to add this class to the Spring container, and as well tell the dispatcher servlet to not return a view. We will just return the value directly. Okay, so let's have our first method public student, because we are going to send student as a response. Public student get student. Let's name this get student, and this will return student. For now, let me have the add get mapping here, add get mapping, and the name of this endpoint is student. Okay, so let's return a student here. I will drag this down. So let's create student equal to new student, So we set these values, name and the department. Student dot set name, and let me have Aliyu, and then followed by student dot set department, and let me have this as mathematics. Okay, so we will return this object as a response body. So we have this student. Okay, now let's define the add request mapping for this, and this will be API / info, then student. Okay, so let's try to access this endpoint from our Postman. Okay, so here we have API update bio. We'll change this API info followed by student. Okay, so let's see what it will return. Remember, it is a get request. So click on send. You see we have this object as a response body. We have name Aliyu and then department mathematics. Okay, so let me show you again how we will send a list of objects as a response body. Okay, so let's have another controller method. Let's start with the endpoint. Call this student with s, that is not only one student, and then have public. This will be a list of students. Okay, list of students, then we will have get student. Okay, so followed by, okay, now let me copy this, have it here, and then we will have another object. Let's have another object, student. Let me add this as student 2, and I will use 1 here. Okay, equal to new student. Okay, so let me set the values here, student 1, student 1, and I will copy this for the second student. So we'll have student 2, student 2. So let me change this name and have a name like Ibrahim, and set this to the department. Let me call this operational research. Okay, so we have 2 objects here, this one and also student 1 and student 2. So let me return this. Okay, let's return a list. Now all access of list of and pass student 1 and student 2 and student 2. Okay, so let's save the changes and go to the Postman, try to access and see what we have. The only thing we will add the difference is just S. Make sure it is a get request and then click on send. So you see we have name Aliyu, department mathematics, and we also have name Ibrahim and department operational research. Okay, so this is how we send object as a response body in a REST service. See you in the next video. Hi, in this section you will going to learn setting response status and headers. Remember, HTTP response is how the server sends data back to the client due to the client request. Before going to setting response status and headers, you need to be familiar with these: response headers, response body, and response status. Response headers is a piece of data in the response, usually not more than a few words. Response body is a larger amount of data the backend needs to send in the response. We have response status, a short representation of the request result. Here, response body. In the previous tutorial, you learned how to send object as a response body. So in this, you will going to learn setting response status and headers. So let's look at this HTTP status code. The response status is an essential signal in the HTTP response used to represent the request result. We have this HTTP status code. You can see here we have 200, which is okay if no exception thrown in the server. We have 404, which is not found if the requested resource not exists. We also have 400, which is bad request if the request could not match with the way the server expected the result. We have 500, that is error on server if an exception is thrown on the server side for any reason. We have 403, forbidden if you don't have permission to access the resource. Okay, so we will going to see how we will set response status and headers in code. Okay, before going to the code, remember we have this body. From the previous tutorial, it returned this as a response body. So this is the response body, and if we have headers in the response, we will have it here. These are default, and if we set custom, you can see it here. Okay, so and here is the status code. Okay, you can see by default is 200 if it is okay, if the request we are looking for is available and it's successfully returned. We have okay. So now we will going to set different status code, and you can see we will have it here, and as well we will going to have headers as well as the response body. So let's go to the code. You can see here we have a student. So we will going to modify this a little. So instead of this, we will use a response entity. Response entity. This class is provided by the Spring. We use this class to set status body, and we also set headers. Okay, so let's have student here. Already you can see we have this student Aliyu and mathematics. So and the next thing we will do, instead of returning the student, we will going to change this to return a response entity. Okay, and we will access the method like status. Here you can see we have status. We can change the status code from okay let's have http status code, http status, here it is, and access something like accepted. You can see we have path request, we have conflict, a lot of it here, forbidden. Okay, so here I will use accepted, which is 202. Okay, and then we will also going to set headers. So let me break this down and access headers in a key value pair. Okay, so the header name here is, let me have a year, and then the value of the year is 20, let's say 25, and then we also need another header. Let's have this school, and let me add the value for the school, that is university. Let me set University of Technology. Okay, so and let's have another header. So let's set like semester, and set this value to second. So what remaining is the body, so let's have the body. So we pass the student as the response body. So let's save these changes and go to the postman, try to access this action. Okay, so we will access the student API info student. Okay, click on send. Remember, it is a get mapping. You can see here we have the body as Aliyu and the department mathematics. This is the body we sent, it is correct. So let's go to the headers. So in the headers we set a custom headers, and let's check if it is available. You see we have a year 2025, school, University of Technology, semester second. So let's check the status code. You can see we have the status code here changed to accepted. Okay, so this is how we set a using response entity to set a status, header, and the body. So see you in the next video. In this section you will learn how to send a data with a request body from the client to the server. So you can see we have this, so we will going to modify this a little. It will not longer going to return this status response entity. So let's change this to student for now, and then the next thing we'll also going to change this to just return a student. So we have at annotation that is called at request body. We use this to accept the request body. So let's have at request body, here it is, and then let's have it of type student. So we need to provide the student. Okay, so you can see we have this. We will not longer going to have this. Let us remove. Okay, so now when we send a request body, we need to print it in the console. So let me use logger equal to logger.get logger followed by student info controller dot class dot get name. Okay, so and when we send this request with the request body, we will print, you can see. So let's have logger dot info. So first of all, we need to print the name. So we will have student dot get name as well. Let's concatenate this. So we also need another one for the department, student dot get department. Okay, so and we will change this to department. Okay, so we have name and department. So let's see how we will send this request body from the postman. Okay, so you can see here we have this, okay, in the address bar, which is the address to our endpoint. So the next thing you can see, we have body here. So we will choose how we will send, then we choose a row. Okay, remember here we have sent this, so we're going to modify this a little so that not to waste time writing. Okay, so let me change this name. This we will send it as a response body. We have name and department, so let me change this to header, and the department for this I will say physics. Okay, so save these changes and then we'll send this. So you can see it return this name, header, physics, department, and because we are returning it here, so let's check if it is printed as we sent it. You see we have header and department, physics. Okay, so in the next tutorial you will going to learn how to manage exception with REST service. In this section you will going to learn how to manage exception at the endpoint level with REST service, that is managing exception in the controller action. Okay, we will have an example for a token service with a token controller, and we will have a model of token. So you can see how we will handle this. Okay, now to manage exception at the endpoint level, let's have a small example that we will create. So we will use a token, and let's see how we will do this. First we need a new package for service, and we also need another package, new package for the exception like this. Okay, so the next thing, we will create a new class in the model, and we will call this token details. Okay, and let's have some field inside this. We'll have private and integer token. So this is all we need to have here. It is not some lot of field. Okay, so we will create the getters and setters for this, generate getters and setters for this. So in the exception we will create a new exception class that will handle the error that we may have in the token service before implementing the token service. Let's have for the exception new class and call the token length exception. Okay, so this will handle the token length, and let's extend the throwable and we will have a constructor to generate a constructor. Let's go to this, generate a constructor from a super class. So let's remove this and generate a constructor like this. Okay, the next thing we will have is the message to pass to the throwable. Okay, so that when we catch exception, we will have to see this message. So here we will have the message token length requirement felt. Okay, so let's create a service class, token service, that will use this exception that we just create. Token service, and we need to annotate this with @service. Okay, so it's fine now, and what we will do next is that we'll have a public void token length manager. So we'll pass the token and it will check the length. So we want the token length of 4 figure, so we will have something like this. If token is less than 1000 or one, will have or token greater than or equal to 10,000, we will have to throw exception. Okay, let's have throw new token length exception. Token length exception. Here it is. Okay, so let's have these two attributes. So now we will create a controller that will use this token service, and we have a method that will check the length, that is token length manager. So let's create a new class and we'll call this token controller. Okay, and we'll annotate this with @raise controller. Okay, so let's have this method. First we will start with the @get mapping, and we'll have this as token. So we'll use public of type response entity. Okay, because we will either throw a it will either return error detail or it will return a token detail. Okay, so we will create the error detail later, which will return as a response. And maybe you may ask why we create this token length exception if we will create another class to return a response. So this token length exception will not return any response. We will have this at a backend. It will inform there is exception at the backend, and we need to inform the client that there is exception as well. Okay, so let's have this as token handler, the name of this method. So we'll receive this as at request body, at request body of token details, token details. Okay, so let's have these. Okay, the first thing we will do is to call the token manager. So we need to have a private token service, and let's generate a constructor for this. Generate constructor using this file. Okay, it's fine. And so the next thing, we will access this token service dot, we have token length manager, and we will use the what we receive as a request body, that is token details, and get the token. Okay, so this will return an exception. So we will surround with try catch. So let's have the first option here. So when it does not throw an exception, what we will do is we will return, let entity dot status will have HTTP status accepted, and we will have the body as token details. Okay, token details. So in case of if it throws exception, what we will do is let's create another class that will have the message to the response. So, and I will call this error details. Okay, so let's have this, and we'll have a field private string message. So let's generate a getters and setters for this. Go to source, generate getters and setters for this, select all and generate. Okay, it's fine. Now we will use this in the token controller. Okay, in case of the exception, first let's call what we just defined, that is error detail. Error details equal to new error details, and we will set the message error details dot, here we have set message, and we will write the token does not the, okay, so let's change this method, the length of the token. We have the message here, the token length requirement failed. Okay, so controller, and then okay, I explained that the difference between these message that we have, it will throw at the backend, and we will return this message to a client for this. So that is the difference. This works in the backend, it throws this exception, and to tell the one who make the request, we have to create these error details again to send it to the client. Okay, so the next thing, we will return the error details as a response body. So let's have as response entity, and this time it is a batch request, does not meet the requirement, and the body for this is error details. Okay, so here you see the reason we have this, because we don't know which one it will throw, which one will have either a token detail accepted or a batch request error detail. It is a different object. That is why we have this question mark. Okay, now let's test this in the Postman. So we need to change this to we will just directly access token. Okay, and the response body here will change. So let's check for the first let's see what we are having. This, go back to the token detail where we are accessing this. I think we have to save this. Okay, that is all we need to do. Okay, so it will be a token. Go back to the Postman. So we'll have this token. Remember, it is integer, and the value that we first pass, let us pass the value below, that is 1000. That is a 3-figure value. Okay, so save this and send as a request. You can see we have this message: token length requirement fail. Okay, so let's pass something that is more than 10,000, like 10,100, like this. So we will still have this message: token length requirement failed. Okay, so here let's pass a 4-figure, 1 2 3 4. Okay, so you can see it return a token. Okay, let's pass another 4-figure, 1 3 5 6 or 5 7, like this. Okay, so you can see it returns no error. So this is how we will manage exception at the endpoint level. So the next thing, in the next video, you will learn how to use add controller advice to handle this exception. In the last video, you will learn how to manage exception in the controller action, and in this case you will learn different thing where you will learn how to manage exception with controller advice. We will separate a logic. We don't have to manage it inside our controller again. We will have this exception controller advice to manage the exception while keeping the controller clean without any exception handling inside it. Okay, so let's do this together. As you can see, this logic is from our previous tutorial where we handle the exception inside the controller action, and in this video we will separate the logic where we'll have another controller, which is exception controller advice, to handle this logic for the exception, where this controller will know nothing about the exception handling logic. Okay, so let's go to the controller and create new class. Okay, and call this exception handling controller advice. Okay, so here it is, exception handling controller advice, and we'll annotate this with @race controller. So the next thing, we'll start having this logic but for this we will have no endpoint here, so we'll annotate the method with @exception handler, then pass the name of this exception. We have token length exception dot class. So let's have the method logic below. We have public, and this will be response entity, and we will pass the arrow detail now, arrow detail, and have it this method arrow handler arrow handler. Okay, so let's define the logic inside. So first of all, let's go back to the token controller, and you can see we have this. So let's remove this. This is the logic in case of error, so we'll remove this and take it to the exception handler. So let's paste this here. So first of all, we have this arrow detail, and we set the message token length requirement failed, and we return the batch request with the body as arrow detail. So this is all what we need to do here, and remember we need to change this to @race controller advice, @race controller advice. Okay, @race controller advice. So let's save these changes, and let's go to the token controller. You can see we doesn't need this exception here, so we go back to the token length exception. Instead, we need to extend the runtime exception. So we extend the runtime exception so that here inside the token service we don't need to have this. All we need to do is return throw new token length exception. Okay, so then our token controller will know nothing about this exception. What will handle the exception is the controller advice. Okay, so let's see if our implementation works as expected. Let's go to the Postman. Here you can see we have based on the previous tutorial, we are passing this as the body of the request. We have token and we are passing this value. So this value is valid because we need a 4-figure. If it passes a 4-figure or less than a 4-figure, it will throw an exception. So let's test this and see. You see it is fine, we doesn't have problem with the code. Let's reduce this to like 135 to see if it will throw. You see it throw exception, token length requirement exception. This is the magic of the Spring. Let's add it above the 4-figure again. Send this. Okay, so you see we have token length requirement exception. So this approach is better because the token controller, we doesn't fill it with a lot of logic like this, so it is better. So this is what we have. See you in the next video.